Nietzsche said people wear masks not to deceive, but to survive. And if you can see through them, you don't just understand others. You own the room they're hiding in. Someone laughs across the room, but it's the wrong kind of laugh. Too sharp, too delayed, too desperate. Everyone else keeps talking, but you freeze because you saw it. That wasn't joy. That was a survival tactic. The eyes scanned the room first. The smile cracked before it reached the cheeks. They weren't laughing to join in. They were laughing so they wouldn't be left out. Most people miss it. You never do. You notice the twitch before the lie. The silence that lasts 1 second too long. The words people don't say, because saying them would make them real. You weren't cursed with this. You were wired for it, to read people like open books, even the ones who've spent their whole lives sealing every page. Most people wouldn't catch that, but you did, because you've always felt like you see what others miss. You don't just hear words, you sense intentions. You notice the cracks in their stories, the nervous tics, the silence after a compliment, the way someone says, "I'm fine," like it's a defense, not a truth. This isn't a gift, it's a burden. You walk through life picking up signals no one else seems to hear, and while others talk about vibes and instincts, you know it's something deeper, an awareness that people are not what they appear. Nietzsche believed the same. He said, "Every deep thinker is more afraid of being understood than of being misunderstood." Why? Because to be seen for who you really are is terrifying. So we wear masks, not to deceive, but to survive. We project versions of ourselves that will be accepted, loved, respected. We hide the rest. But Nietzsche didn't stop there. He believed that we don't just lie to others, we lie to ourselves first. Every identity is a carefully crafted illusion, a shield against chaos, weakness, and fear. That means to understand someone, to truly read them, is to peel away every layer of denial they've built. And once you know how to do that, once you can spot the subtle signs, the body language contradictions, the emotional slips, you gain something rare, the power to see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. This isn't a party trick. It's not manipulation. It's perception at its highest form. And over the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to sharpen it. Using 18 psychological truths inspired by Nietzsche. Truths that most people ignore, but you won't anymore. Because after this, you'll never look at anyone the same again. Before a person ever lies to you, they lie to themselves. That's where Nietzsche begins. Not with deception as a conscious strategy, but as a psychological reflex. A defense mechanism so deeply embedded that most people don't even realize they're doing it. They build identities not from truth, but from necessity, crafting who they need to be in order to survive in a world that punishes weakness and rewards performance. The lie isn't always dramatic, it's subtle. A person tells themselves they're not angry, even when their tone sharpens, that they don't care even as they obsess, that they're strong even while breaking silently under pressure. They've rehearsed the narrative so many times that it's become their reality. Nietzsche called this self-deception the original sin of consciousness. It's not just lying with words. It's lying with memory, emotion, even perception. And once you understand that, you realize most people aren't hiding from you. They're hiding from themselves. So if you want to read someone, really read them. You don't start by looking at what they say. You look at where what they say doesn't match how they live. You look for the cracks between their proclaimed values and their repeated actions, between who they think they are and who they can't help being when the mask slips. This is where Nietzsche's brilliance cuts through. He didn't believe that truth was simply about facts. He believed truth was found in contradiction, not between people, but within them. The kindest person might be the one suppressing rage. The confident one might be crumbling inside. The happy one might be running from something darker than they're willing to admit. That's why most people are unreadable. Not because they're too complex, but because they don't even know who they are. They've blurred the line between the mask and the face, and if you're not careful, you'll read their illusion as truth. But once you adopt Nietzsche's lens, something changes. You stop reading people at face value. You start reading their defense systems, their habits, hesitations, the stories they tell to keep their identity from falling apart. Because in the end, you're not reading a person, you're reading their survival script. The first truth is silent. It doesn't come from the mouth or the hands or even posture. It comes from the eyes. You want to understand someone? Watch their eyes. Nietzsche believed that power doesn't always announce itself with words. It doesn't need to. It leaks, quietly, through subtle behaviors. And nothing leaks more than the gaze. The eyes are a battlefield where ego and fear collide, often without the person ever realizing it. They are the cracks in the mask we wear. Truth number one, the eyes flinch before the lie is told. When someone is preparing to be dishonest, their gaze shifts. Not because they're calculating a response, but because their subconscious is already panicking. A quick glance to the side, a blink that lasts a beat too long. It's not guilt you're seeing, it's the body reacting to the threat of exposure. Nietzsche knew that self-preservation doesn't begin with the mouth, it begins with avoidance. Truth number two, dilated pupils don't ask for permission. When someone is deeply engaged, emotionally, intellectually, or romantically, their pupils widen. It's involuntary. It happens when they're excited, afraid, or intrigued. In that moment, the eyes become windows not to the soul, but to the instinct. No matter what they say, the eyes tell you what the body wants or fears. Truth number three, scanning the room is a confession. Ever notice someone's eyes darting while they talk? That's not curiosity, that's hierarchy. People scan the room when they feel uncertain of their position. They're looking for someone more valuable to impress, more eyes to catch. It's not personal, it's ego management. You're not enough to hold their full attention because their social survival instinct is still looking for a better deal. Truth number four, avoiding eye contact is not always shyness, it's self-protection. When someone avoids your gaze during confrontation or vulnerability, they're not being polite, they're shielding themselves from judgment. Eye contact is intimacy, and not everyone wants to be seen. To look into someone's eyes is to risk being recognized, and not everyone is ready for that, especially if they're hiding something. Truth number five, staring is a form of control. It might seem like confidence, but sometimes it's assertion, dominance, a refusal to yield. When someone locks eyes with you too long, without blinking, without softening, it's not connection, it's a challenge. Nietzsche saw this not as courage, but as the ego's last stand. It says, I refuse to be the smaller one here. Truth number six, the moment of silence is the moment of truth. When someone stops speaking and you just watch, no interruptions, no pressure, their eyes react. That's when you see the real emotion, the fear, the desire, the hesitation. Silence doesn't make people comfortable. It exposes them. The eyes panic before the mind can catch up. Nietzsche knew that the most powerful truths are never spoken. They're leaked through glances, reactions, absences. Most people spend their lives trying to be heard, but those who see, who truly see, are the ones who read what was never said. Truth number seven, tone matters more than content. You've heard someone say, I'm fine, but something about the way they said it told you everything was wrong. That's not your imagination. That's the body fighting the words. Tone is the emotional residue that clings to every phrase. When the tone doesn't match the message, believe the tone. The truth leaks through the cracks in how something is said, not what is said. Truth number eight, excessive explanation is a defense, not a detail. When someone explains too much, they're not clarifying, they're justifying. They're trying to close a gap between who they are and who they want you to think they are. The over-explainer fears being misunderstood, not because they care about connection, but because they fear losing control of the narrative. Truth number nine, humble bragging is ego in disguise. I'm just lucky I get asked to speak at these conferences. That's not humility, that's strategy. Nietzsche believed that humility can be a subtle form of domination, a way to brag while disarming criticism. It masks ambition with modesty. The intent is clear, elevate status without sounding arrogant, but the insecurity behind it always shows. Truth number 10, false modesty is a shield. Watch for people who downplay their success too quickly, who deflect compliments with forced discomfort. That's not always grace. Sometimes it's fear, fear of envy, fear of judgment. Nietzsche would argue that true confidence doesn't hide behind fake denial. It doesn't whisper, it just is. And when someone overperforms modesty, they're begging not to be attacked. Truth number 11, passive aggression is polished hostility. I guess some people just don't care about being on time. That's not casual observation. That's warfare disguised as etiquette. Passive aggression lets someone attack without admitting intent. It protects the ego while injuring others. Nietzsche saw this as cowardice, the refusal to confront directly and the need to dominate quietly. Truth number 12, contradiction is the most honest part of speech. A person says they value peace, yet they're always in conflict. They talk about loyalty, yet they gossip without pause. These contradictions aren't mistakes, they're signals. Nietzsche would say, don't dismiss them, highlight them. That's where the real personality lives. In the gap between declaration and action. The greater the gap, the greater the self-deception. Words are not facts, they're armor. People construct sentences like barricades, to guard shame, to deflect doubt, to mask longing. Reading someone isn't about decoding their vocabulary. It's about listening between the lines, where the performance fades and the projection begins to crack. Because speech isn't a confession, it's a costume, and most people are too afraid to take it off. Words can lie. Even eyes and tone can be rehearsed. But patterns don't pretend. Nietzsche believed that without awareness, we are trapped in repetition, doomed to perform the same cycles of behavior, no matter how many new masks we wear. The way someone reacts, not once, but consistently, is their real story. Watch how someone responds to discomfort. That's where the truth lives. Truth number 13, anger reveals what the ego clings to. Some people explode over small things. Being corrected, being interrupted, being challenged. It's not about the situation, it's about the identity they're protecting. Anger isn't always an emotional outburst. Sometimes it's a defense of a fragile self-concept. If someone gets defensive when called out or lashes out when questioned, they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to what they fear about themselves. Truth number 14, avoidance exposes the wound. What someone avoids repeatedly is what controls them. Avoiding responsibility, avoiding silence, avoiding honesty. These aren't habits, they're patterns of protection. Nietzsche understood this as psychological resistance. If you want to know where someone hurts, look at what they constantly run from. A person who avoids stillness may be haunted by their own thoughts. A person who avoids closeness may fear abandonment. Avoidance is not freedom, it's bondage. Truth number 15, reaction to failure is the blueprint of their mind. When someone fails, their mask falls. The performance can't hold under pressure. Do they blame others, shut down, laugh it off, or learn quietly? You'll know more about a person from one moment of defeat than from 10 moments of success. Nietzsche saw failure not as a flaw, but as a mirror, the moment we're forced to meet ourselves. And most people look away. The real skill in reading people isn't catching their slip-ups, it's noticing their rhythms, how often they gossip, how they talk about people when they're not in the room, whether they consistently praise but never congratulate, whether they over-apologize, because repetition is where authenticity hides. Not in isolated gestures, but in behavioral loops. A person's personality isn't what they claim. It's what they repeat when they think no one's keeping score. Nietzsche warned that unless we confront these patterns, we become slaves to them. So when you observe others, or even yourself, don't ask what they meant. Ask what they do again and again. That's where the unconscious leaks through. That's where the script reveals itself. Most people believe manipulation is obvious, that it wears a villain's grin or shows up in grand gestures. But Nietzsche saw it differently. He believed manipulation is everywhere, quiet, constant, and culturally accepted. It doesn't live in dramatic confrontations. It lives in pleasantries, in pauses, in the way someone laughs too hard at the right person's joke, in how silence is used as punishment. Truth number 16. Every interaction has a status signal. The way someone positions themselves in a room, the way they speak, not just to you, but about you. Are they trying to impress or intimidate? Do they ask questions or only talk about themselves? Do they interrupt or do they listen too intently, waiting for the moment to mirror your tone? Status isn't only about wealth or titles, it's about control. Who gets to lead the rhythm of the conversation? Who talks more? Who deflects vulnerability first? Nietzsche believed every sentence we utter is soaked in a desire to be seen, admired, feared, or obeyed. Truth number 17. Words can dominate without raising their voice. A joke can be a jab. A compliment can be a warning. You're so sensitive can be a trap, a way to shame you for reacting. I was just joking is often a coward's retreat. These aren't mistakes, they're strategies, tools used to maintain superiority while keeping the appearance of innocence. And once you hear them through Nietzsche's lens, they lose their camouflage. Even small talk is power play. How are you? Isn't always a question. Sometimes it's a script meant to keep things polite but superficial, to maintain social equilibrium without ever inviting truth. Other times it's a probe, a way to measure your mood, your stability, your usefulness in that moment. Tone matters, timing matters. What's not said matters even more. Guilt tripping is another tool. It's subtle. After all I've done for you, I guess I just care more. It forces you to fold, to submit. Nietzsche believed that morality was often used as manipulation, a way for the powerless to shame the powerful and the powerful to guilt the vulnerable. Either way, it's never neutral. Reading people isn't about being paranoid. It's about being conscious. Every interaction carries a current, and if you're not careful, you'll be swept into someone else's game without realizing it. Because most people don't want truth. They want leverage, and if you don't see it, you'll become it. Truth 18. The final truth is the quietest, but it carries the most weight. You never see someone clearly when they know they're being seen. When eyes are on them, people become their most performative selves. Every gesture is calculated. Every smile is measured. They say what they're supposed to say. They act how they believe they should act. But when no one's watching, that's when the mask falls. Watch how someone treats a stranger who holds no value to them. The barista, the janitor, the waiter. There's no need to impress, no gain to be had, just instinct. If they snap, dismiss, or ignore, that's not a bad moment. That's a glimpse. That's the real person, bleeding through the act. Notice what they do when attention fades, how they sit when no one's listening, how they react when they're not the center of the conversation. Do they shrink? Do they sulk? Do they interrupt just to re-enter the spotlight? Nietzsche believed that ego feeds on recognition, and when starved, it reveals its hunger in desperate, petty ways. Then there's how they behave when denied power, when they don't get the final say. When their idea is rejected, do they take it with grace or with passive retaliation? Do they fake agreement only to undermine later? Morality, Nietzsche argued, is never what you say in the light. It's what you do in the dark, when no one's keeping score. The purest revelations come in micro moments. A sigh after being corrected, an eye roll when someone else is praised, a smirk when someone else stumbles. These aren't accidents, they're fractures, brief unscripted ruptures in the persona. And if you learn to spot them, you'll see the truth before it's spoken, the soul before it's dressed. Because people don't reveal themselves, they leak. We live in a world of curated identities. Every photo is filtered, every caption is crafted, every story we share is edited for optics. In this digital theater, perception is currency, and performance is survival. But Nietzsche's truths tear through this illusion. He reminds us that the masks we wear, online and offline, are not just deception, they're shields. Shields built to protect fragile egos from rejection, exposure, and insignificance. And as technology gives us more tools to refine our image, the distance between who we are and who we pretend to be grows wider. Social media isn't the root of the problem, it's just the newest mirror. One that reflects not just our vanity, but our fear. Fear of being average, fear of being disliked, fear of being seen without the filter. And yet, in this culture of constant performance, the ability to read people becomes a rare form of clarity. It cuts through the noise. It helps you spot the insecurity behind the flex, the loneliness behind the smile, the manipulation behind the charm. You begin to see how much of modern life is shaped by silent psychological warfare. Everyone trying to be seen, but on their own terms. But this awareness isn't just about others. It turns inward too. Once you recognize how others wear masks, you start questioning your own. You realize how much of your identity is built on defense, how often you laugh to fit in, stay silent to avoid conflict, or chase validation to feel worthy. You stop asking, "Who do I want to be?" and start asking, "What am I hiding from?" That's the real power in Nietzsche's truths. Not just the ability to read others, but to read yourself, to strip away the excuses, the scripts, the roles you've rehearsed, to finally see your patterns for what they are, and maybe to break them. Because in a world of artificial connection, the rarest thing is to be real, to see clearly, to speak honestly, to live without illusion. And those who can don't just navigate the world, they transcend it. This is not about judgment, it's about liberation. The more clearly you see others, the less you're controlled by them. The more honestly you face yourself, the more free you become. There's a cost to seeing clearly. Once you learn to read people, truly read them, you stop believing in surface-level smiles. You hear the fear behind the laughter. You feel the tension in the room that no one else acknowledges. You notice the performative kindness, the strategic silence, the compliments with knives hidden inside them. You see things others don't, and it changes you. Because when you start perceiving the mass, you can never unsee them. Conversations lose their innocence. Relationships reveal their imbalance. You watch people say one thing and mean another, and while others are comforted by the illusion, you feel the weight of the truth pressing into your mind like static that never turns off. And yes, it's isolating. You'll begin to question sincerity, not out of paranoia, but out of awareness. You'll feel alone in rooms full of people who are still enchanted by the script. And part of you might wish you could go back to not notice the lie in the tone, the insecurity in the joke, the manipulation in the praise. But Nietzsche wouldn't call this a tragedy. He'd call it freedom. Because freedom isn't comfort, it's clarity. And clarity, though heavy, is the beginning of liberation. When you see clearly, you stop being controlled. You stop chasing approval. You stop falling for masks, including your own. To read others is to understand the world, but to understand yourself, your projections, your fears, your patterns, is to reclaim your mind from illusion. Most will never get there. Most will choose blindness because blindness feels safer. But for those who choose to see, even if it hurts, there's power. Quiet, dangerous, beautiful power. Truth isn't soft, it's sharp. And once it cuts you open, it never lets you go. So now you see what most people miss. The cracks in the mask, the truths hidden in silence, the language of the unconscious. But if you can read them, who's reading you? The deeper you dive into human psychology, the more unsettling the mirror becomes. And if this opened your eyes, wait until you see what's next. In the upcoming video, we'll uncover the dark psychological tactics people use to control you without you ever realizing it. Drop a comment if you've ever felt something was off but couldn't explain why. And if this made you think differently, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.